Welcome to the Quantanix YouTube channel. You're listening to the Time Travel Podcast, Episode 2, The Temporal Prime Directive Ethics Across Time. Okay, let's unpack this. We all grapple with right and wrong, how we make decisions. It's been a human obsession for ages. But what happens when you add a temporal dimension? What are our obligations then?
Yeah, it introduces a whole new level of complexity, doesn't it? I mean, our usual ethical frameworks, they tend to look at actions in a straight line, what happens now, what might happen next. The Temporal Prime Directive, though, it asks us to consider the morality of interfering with the entire flow of time.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're venturing into the thought-provoking world of Star Trek's Temporal Prime Directive. Think of it as the ultimate rule against messing with the past. Our mission today is to see how this idea, which started with Starfleet's rule about not interfering with developing alien societies in space, stretches the boundaries of ethics when you apply it to time travel. We'll be using the TPD to really dig into some big ideas, power, responsibility, and the frankly bizarre concept of cause and effect across the timeline.
And what's fascinating here is how that initial principle, the one about spatial non-interference, was sort of adapted, how it was adapted to tackle the unique challenges that come with, manipulating time, the potential for things to go sideways, for unintended and even catastrophic outcomes. It gets amplified dramatically when time travel is in the mix.
So let's get down to brass tacks then.
Yeah.
What is the Temporal Prime Directive? Fundamentally.
At its heart, the Temporal Prime Directive is a strict prohibition. It's against directly interfering with historical events. The core idea is to protect the integrity of the timeline, prevent any alterations to what has already occurred. As it's put on the Federation Space official wiki, I think the quote is, all Starfleet personnel are strictly forbidden from directly interfering with historical events and are required to maintain the timeline and prevent history from being altered.
Okay, so a pretty firm look but don't touch rule for history.
Precisely, yeah. And it's not just about physical actions either.
Oh.
The TPD also restricts revealing too much information about future events. The logic there is pretty straightforward. Knowing the future could easily create paradoxes or, set off unforeseen changes to the timeline. Imagine telling someone centuries ago about the internet, the chain reaction could be immense and, impossible to predict.
Yeah, no kidding. Sounds like they don't take any chances with this at all.
Absolutely not. The directive is often described as inviolable. If there are signs of temporal instability, Starfleet officers might even cite the TPD as a reason not to answer questions, just flat out refuse.
Wow.
It shows just how serious they consider temporal violations compared to, say, other breaches of protocol. The scope of potential damage is it's on a different scale.
And this isn't just a suggestion in a Starfleet handbook somewhere, right? It's more fundamental.
Oh, definitely. No, it's deeply ingrained in their operational framework. By the 29th century in the Star Trek universe, the Federation had even established the Temporal Integrity Commission.
A whole commission?
Yeah. A dedicated organization specifically created to monitor and prevent deviations from the natural course of history. The existence of a body like that really highlights the Federation's profound commitment to temporal ethics. It's serious business.
Okay, so we understand the what, but when did this rule actually become a firm thing in the Star Trek universe? Was it always part of the picture?
That's interesting, actually. While time travel itself appeared fairly early in Star Trek, the formal codification of the Temporal Prime Directive, it seems to have developed more gradually. Analysis suggests it became standard Starfleet policy somewhere between, say, 2368 and 2371.
Okay, so next generation Deep Space Nine era.
Exactly, yeah. Which aligns with the shows that really started to delve into these more complex temporal themes.
So Captain Kirk wasn't quoting this back in the original series?
Not the TPD by that name, no. But, and this is important, the underlying ethical principles. They were definitely present much earlier. For instance, Captain Picard mentioned the possibility of such a directive back in 2368. He speculated that future time travelers might have rules against altering the past.
Okay. Laying groundwork.
Right. And then by 2371, Captain Janeway in Star Trek, Voyager, she clearly understood and operated under a well-established TPD. And maybe fast forward a bit, by about 2390, like we see in that potential timeline in the Timeless episode, violating it could lead to serious legal trouble. Charges filed, court-martials, the works.
But you mentioned Kirk's actions earlier.
Yeah.
Even without a formal TPD. He was thinking along these lines.
Yes, definitely. Even before the formal directive, Captain Kirk's decisions sometimes reflected its core ideas. There's a particularly powerful example when Kirk and his crew were accidentally transported to 1930.
Oh, City on the Edge of Forever. Classic.
Exactly. Kirk faced that heartbreaking realization that Edith Keeler, a woman he had come to care for deeply, had to die in a traffic accident. He understood that her survival would fundamentally change the timeline, preventing the eventual formation of the Federation.
So he had to let it happen.
He did. It demonstrates that the fundamental ethical considerations of non-interference were absolutely at play even before the official TPD was written down.
That's a brutal choice. One life versus the future of, well, everything. This directive must create some serious conflict in the stories.
Oh, it absolutely does. That's often where the best drama comes from, right? The conflict between upholding the timeline and addressing immediate crises that are often very personal and emotionally charged. It's a recurring and potent theme. The inviolable nature of the TPD frequently puts characters in incredibly difficult ethical positions.
Can you give us some more specific examples of how this tension plays out, besides Kirk and Keeler?
Well, that one, The City on the Edge of Forever, it perfectly illustrates what we might call a utilitarian approach in ethics, meaning the action that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. In that specific instance, the sacrifice of one individual, Edith Keeler, was deemed necessary for the perceived greater good across the vast expanse of time.
Right. Benefit the most overall, even if individuals suffer.
Right.
Applied across time.
Exactly. But then we see cases that offer a very different perspective. Look at the ending of Star Trek, Voyager.
Admiral Janeway.
Right. Admiral Janeway made a deliberate and, frankly, significant violation of the TPD. She gave future knowledge to her past self, directly altering events.
Why?
To bring the USS Voyager and its crew home much earlier than they would have otherwise arrived. This action leans more towards what we call a deontological perspective.
Deontological?
Where the focus is more on duties and rules, rather than just consequences. In this case, arguably, her duty to her crew took precedence over the abstract rule about the timeline.
So her immediate duty to her people in that moment trumped the overarching principle of protecting history.
That's a key point of ethical debate that the show itself raises, yeah. And then you have the more complex, sort of ambiguous situations. Consider Captain Sisko's accidental role in the death of Gabriel Bell in 2024, back in Star Trek. Deep Space Nine.
The Bell riots arc, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
To prevent a catastrophic alteration to history because of Bell's death, Sisko then had to step in and essentially take Bell's place. He had to ensure the historical outcome remained the same. It was a very nuanced situation, wasn't it? A kind of middle ground where the timeline was preserved, but through a very direct, albeit reactive, form of interference.
It's like trying to correct a mistake by becoming part of the mistake, sort of. So, okay, moving beyond the dramatic storytelling.
Yeah.
What are the deeper philosophical questions that the TPD brings up? This gets heady, I imagine.
It really does. The Temporal Prime Directive forces us to grapple with some really fundamental questions about causality, free will, moral responsibility, in a way that our everyday linear understanding of time just doesn't. Unlike our usual ethical considerations, which assume time moves forward predictably, temporal ethics has to contend with paradoxes, altered realities, the very nature of time itself.
Yeah, it really messes with your head. Like, if the past has changed, does the present I know even exist anymore? Or does it branch off?
Precisely. And this leads to dilemmas like, if suffering in the past ultimately leads to a better future, like with Edith Keeler, perhaps is that morally justifiable? Or, flip side, if we have knowledge of a future catastrophe, is withholding that information to preserve the timeline actually a harmful act in itself?
That's a tough one.
The TPD, with its general emphasis on protecting the timeline, tends to favor a consequentialist approach, prioritizing the overall shape of history.
Which immediately brings up the whole debate between free will and determinism, doesn't it? If the timeline is so sacred, so fixed, do we even have genuine choices?
That's a crucial question, absolutely. If history has to unfold in a specific way for the TPD to make sense, what real moral agency do temporal actors or even us in our own time truly possess? Although some analyses of Star Trek, particularly Voyager, propose a slightly different model, where the future isn't necessarily a fixed path, but maybe exists as a range of probabilities, constantly being shaped by actions and decisions.
More like quantum mechanics. Probabilities collapsing based on observation or action.
Something like that, yeah. It allows for some agency while still acknowledging the dangers of large-scale interference. And the TPD also broadens our concept of moral responsibility in a fascinating way.
How so?
Well, traditionally we think about our obligations to those around us now and maybe to future generations, right?
Sure.
But temporal ethics, as embodied by the TPD, asks us to consider our responsibility to the past as well. Our actions in the present could have unforeseen repercussions backwards, messing up the historical record.
So it's a bi-directional moral consideration,
Yeah,
past and future.
exactly. It's a two-way street of moral concern, which is quite a mind-bending idea.
Okay, so it's a fictional rule in a sci-fi universe. Fascinating stuff. But can this temporal prime directive actually offer any valuable insights into real-world ethics today? I mean, we don't have time ships.
We don't know, not as far as we know, but I think it absolutely can offer insights. The TPD functions as a really powerful thought experiment. You can see it essentially as a kind of precautionary principle, but applied to messing with time. It acknowledges that complex systems like the timeline in the fiction, or indeed our own deeply interconnected world, can have unpredictable and far-reaching consequences when significantly disrupted.
Okay, I see that.
The key insight for you, for the listener, is maybe to see the TPD not just as a sci-fi concept, but as a potent metaphor. A metaphor for the long-term, potentially irreversible impacts of our powerful technologies.
So like a warning label for tinkering with really big, intricate systems, like AI climate.
Exactly. Think about modern technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, even large-scale geoengineering projects. These are incredibly powerful tools.
Sure.
They have the potential for profound and lasting consequences, some of which we might not fully grasp right now. The TPD's emphasis on caution, on the possibility of unintended ripple effects. It provides a valuable framework for how we should ethically approach developing and using these technologies.
It's about thinking way beyond the immediate effects, isn't it? Considering those long-term consequences across time, even if it's not literal time travel we're talking about.
Precisely, thinking generationally or even further. And the TPD also provides a model for how to ethically navigate situations where there's a significant imbalance of knowledge and power.
How does that map to today?
Well, time travelers in Star Trek possess information that people in the past don't, creating a real asymmetry, right? We see similar dynamics today. Think about advanced AI systems that might surpass human understanding in certain areas, or genetic technologies that could give certain groups unprecedented abilities, or even just access to vast amounts of data.
Mm-hmm.
The TPD's restrictions on revealing future knowledge, on interfering based on that knowledge, they offer a fictional blueprint for how we might ethically manage such imbalances in our own world.
So the idea of not overwhelming people with information they aren't ready for, or not using superior knowledge to manipulate, that really resonates with some of the challenges we face today with tech and data.
It does. And finally, there's one more point maybe. The fact that the TPD is violated numerous times within Star Trek itself, that offers a critical real-world lesson too.
But the rules aren't perfect.
Or maybe that even seemingly rigid ethical principles might require contextual flexibility. They might need bending or breaking when faced with really compelling, immediate moral imperatives. The show acknowledges that sometimes specific ethical obligations can clash with abstract, overarching rules.
It's a reminder that ethics isn't always black and white, is it? Even when there's a prime directive involved. Okay, so to sort of bring this deep dive to a close, wrap things up.
Sure. The Temporal Prime Directive, while it's a product of science fiction, it really stands as a remarkably sophisticated exploration of ethics extended across time. It compels us to consider moral responsibility beyond our familiar spatial boundaries and to really think about the implications of our actions across the temporal landscape.
And even though we're not jumping through time yet anyway, the core principles, exercising caution with powerful technologies, respecting the natural course of development, whether that's societal or ecological, and being keenly aware of unintended consequences, those are absolutely relevant to our lives right now.
Absolutely. As our technology continues to advance, as it compresses time in some ways and amplifies our influence across generations, the TPD offers a valuable framework, perhaps, for considering our responsibilities across that fourth dimension.
This has been truly eye-opening. Really makes you consider the lasting impact of our choices, doesn't it? So here's a final thought for you listening. In a world with increasingly accelerated and far-reaching consequences of our actions, should we more consciously consider how our decisions might reverberate through time itself, going beyond just the immediate effects on those around us? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.